Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today, those of you that know me know I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm sitting here with Mr. Jason Isringhausen. Jason, how you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Keeping busy these times?
Between chasing the kids and trying to get into the woods, yeah, it's been good so far.
How's hunting going?
Pretty slow, but just got back from Pebble, and that was nice out there. So I got to do some golfing with some guys, and now it's about that time to get started with. We got the holidays coming up, and everybody knows after the holidays is time for baseball. Yeah. So get going with that again.
That's right. So I texted you and said, did you break 90? And your response, you got better every round of golf out there.
I did. I went from an 83, I think, down to a 79. So it's about that. That's my handicap, is right there in that 10 area, a little bit around it. So it worked out well. I mean, we had some bad weather, a lot of rain, a lot of wind, but we got the full effect of Pebble.
That's awesome.
And but the guys had fun.
That's good. That's good. So have you played golf your whole life, or has this been a new thing once baseball?
I picked this up after I got out of baseball. So I retired in 2012, and I had golfed at, just during the season at a couple of like Albert's tournaments and things like that, or something like you did for the Swing for Hope.
Yeah.
Different stuff like that with Jimmy involved, Edmonds, and now it's me against that stupid golf ball, trying to get better and get my handicap down so I don't embarrass myself.
What's more frustrating, throwing a fastball or hitting a golf ball?
Oh, definitely hitting a golf ball. It's just sitting there. It's not really moving, and it's hard to get to go straight.
So here's a little information. You were drafted by the New York Mets in 1991. You obviously know all this stuff, but laying the land out here for our listeners. 300 career saves on the dot. 300 career saves. Two-time All-Star, the National League saves leader in 2004 with 47 saves, and you are married with a couple kiddos.
Yeah, I'm married to my wife, Lori, with a 16-year-old daughter, God help me, Madeline, and a 9-year-old daughter, Emerson, who is my little spark plug. And, they help keep me young. I don't get too much grass underneath my feet. I just keep moving, keep chasing. Especially the older one, I try to do as much as I can with her now because I missed so much when she was younger playing baseball. So now it's total daddy time, and she just started driving. She just turned 16, so it's a whole new set of worries, as most parents know. But it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
That's right.
And I do get to spend a little more time at home rather than running so much. But it's a whole new set of worries.
That's right. So let's dive into some of the mindset stuff. As you know, I love talking about that stuff. But when you think about, you probably don't remember this. We were golfing. This is years ago. We're over at Sunset Hills. And you said one of the hardest things for you is to replace the adrenaline of the baseball, right?
Right.
And you got 50,000 fans, you get the millions on TV watching. I mean, so talk to our listeners about that for a second. I mean, how do you replace something like that when it was such a big part of your life? I mean, where do you go find that now?
Well, I mean, you got to remember it's there was one set of adrenaline when that phone would ring, telling me to get loose, and then when that bullpen gate opens up and I start running across the field and the songs come on and stuff, and that's a new set of adrenaline. And then once the umpire says play ball and I make that first pitch of the inning, it's just a mindset of having your I was always like, pin your ears back with your hair on fire and just go as hard as you can for as long as you can. And now it's I really can't duplicate it, without hurting myself, pretty much. So.
Right.
I try to do it with a little bit of hunting. I am working with the Cardinals minor leaguers now. A lot of the young kids that are up in the big leagues now, the last couple of years I've worked with.
Yeah.
And I get my adrenaline now watching them play. And I get more nervous now watching them than I ever did playing. Yeah. As most parents know who are athletes, watching their kids, it's grueling. And but watching them on the highest stage, the biggest stage, and watching their failures and seeing how they react and helping them get through those hard times. I mean, it's easy when things are going good.
Right.
But when you screw up in front of the whole world and you're on MLB Network that night getting abused by people, it can tend to mentally drain a kid, and we just got to keep building them up, keep them going.
So what advice do you give those kids? Because, I think about the fact that, one night you got to be pitching it maybe on a Monday night, and you may give up a home run and lose the game. But then that same phone call comes in the next night. You got to turn the page, right?
Right.
So how do you do that? How did you do it? How do you educate them to do it?
It's a difficult process. I mean, I'm still doing it today. I mean, because every day that I think that I messed up as a father, I have to turn the page and do it all over again the next day. And you hope you make the right decisions. And the hardest part for me was letting my teammates down. So having that short-term memory, trusting the process. We preach to these kids the process is more important than a product. And our routine, it has to be set in stone. So one thing you do every day is your routine. That's always set in stone. And, if you do that well, then your job is complete for the day. And once you start crossing things off the list each day, you're having a good day. And if you make one mistake, you look back on your day, you made one mistake out of, say, 15 or 20 through the process. Yep. And that's kind of how I preach to them today. I didn't have these tools as much when I was growing up. Right. Mine was back of the old school way. You have a couple adult pops, you go about it the next day. Right. And that's the way it was. But now we give these kids tools to help them deal with the pressures and the failures. And my whole thing is I'd wanted to explain to these kids, I want to see kids who aren't afraid to fail. Yep. If I can find a kid who's not afraid to fail, he's going to succeed more times than not. Yep. And that's what we preach to them. And we weed them out pretty quick. You'll find out who's got the stones to do it and who doesn't. Right. And
you probably know pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got to have the stones and you got to have the heart. Right. And if you don't have both of them, you're going to get halfway there. Yeah. And, like I said, we weed them out and we can find those kids pretty quick.
Yeah. So what are those habits and rituals when you think about a day? Because, maybe you played, it's probably midnight, 1 o'clock before you get to bed, even on a normal night, right? Forget going out and having a couple pops, but you just get to bed at maybe it's midnight. Sleep in a little bit. What's it look like then until nighttime when you're getting ready to play baseball again?
I mean, for me, I guess it changed throughout the years, being single and then having a family, having a wife, and then having kids. Everything changes from day to day or from, I guess, year to year, month to month. But at the end of my career, it was like you get up, take the kids to school, you check that off the list. You get them home, maybe take a nap, have breakfast with the wife, check that off the list. Get to the park, I'd get there about noon to 1 for a 7 o'clock game, and then the day starts. You go out and you do your running, you do your lifting, you do your stretching, you do your therapy, each check, and once the game starts, you got a whole new set of checklists. Right. You go out I would always get to the bullpen about the 5th inning, so I would spend the first 2 innings in the dugout. Okay. I'd always watch Tony La Russa go about his thing and talk to some starters about certain pitchers when they go over pitching reports, scouting reports, little stuff like that. So we're watching videos in the clubhouse. We're going over scouting reports. And then come second inning, I go in and take a shower, get dressed, which was a methodical process in its own, always putting on the same socks. I was very superstitious to a point. Not that, but if I had a bad game, everything went away and I had all new stuff. But everything is a checklist, and everybody's different. Yep. And we preach to these kids about having a routine. Everybody's different, but a lot of kids come from high schools or colleges, and they think they have it figured out because they've had success. And then when they get hit in the mouth with failure, they learn real quick that they have to have something to fall back on, and a routine is something you can always fall back on. And when you have a good routine, then 3/4 of your day is already taken care of. Yep. Because as a pitcher, I mean, we know that once we let go of the ball, there's a lot of it that's not in our control anymore. And if we can't control things, we have to know that. Yep. And we can't control a ball lost in the sun, a bad hop, an error. So our failures come from other failures sometimes. Yep. And we have to know that as pitchers. And, we talk about routine. We talk about controlling what we can control. And if we do all those things, when we let go of the baseball, then we have a good mindset.
But I think also you come up with a game plan, right? And maybe there's one out and nobody on, and then all of a sudden, hey, you get a nice little ground ball to second base. Guy boots it. Now there's a man on first with one out. That just changed your entire game plan, right?
Now the game plan just went out the window. Right. Now it's survival mode.
Right.
And then you fall back on your scouting reports. You fall back on your strengths. You're using your strengths to get against their weaknesses. And sometimes my strengths was their strength, but I always knew that my strengths would beat theirs if I made a good pitch. Right. So I always went with my strength, no matter if they said, "Oh, this guy can't hit a changeup." Well, I'm not going to get beat with my third best pitch. Right. So I'm going to get beat with my best pitch, no matter what it is. As long as I put it in a good place, And then if I get beat, sometimes you have to tip your cap.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. And I think it's just like the quarterback in football, right? At the end of the day, whether the second baseman did that or not, it falls back on the pitcher, right? You're the one they're talking about.
Well,
news,
that's
right?
why I always say, I mean, that's why we get paid the big bucks,
That's
you know,
right.
just like a quarterback. I mean,
Right.
no matter what happens, he gets the wins or the losses, even if his receiver drops one in the end zone.
Right.
He did his job, but like I said, you control what you can control. And if you do that at the end of the day, if you're okay with that, then you can go to sleep and hang your head high and know what you did all you could do.
Yeah. So I'm going to grab this. And obviously you grew up in Brighton, Illinois.
Right?
You see a Cardinal hat. You see the Cardinal logo. I'm assuming you grew up a Cardinal fan. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yep.
So when you got to put that on for the first time, what was that like?
I think I was more happy for my family than I was myself because I was just a baseball player,
Yeah.
you know. But it was funny. I mean, the day that I agreed to sign with the Cardinals, I had left that morning, and I was signing with the Texas Rangers.
Oh, my goodness.
And myself and a friend of mine, Chris Wilderman, we went out to Gateway National and played golf. And Mr. DeWitt called me on the phone. And I was like, hey, I got to take this phone call.
Yeah.
And he goes, what's it going to take for me to get you a Cardinal, to become a Cardinal? And I just threw out a number. And he goes, all right, done. And I was like, well, maybe I should have made my number a little higher. And we both kind of chuckled, but I said, it's not about the money. It was about you actually calling me and wanting me because I had never talked to him before.
Wow.
That's all I needed to hear. I was going to Texas because I sat down and had dinner with Mr. Hicks. He was the owner of the Rangers at that time. And that meant a lot to me. And I hadn't heard from Mr. DeWitt, but when I finally did, I was like, you could have said $50 and I would have been here because how can you pass up playing for the Birds on the bat?
Right.
And growing up watching Willie and Ozzie and Keith Hernandez. And now I get to go to fantasy camps with all these guys, and they're my friends. I consider them close friends. And we, joke around with each other, and we have a good time. And it's just been a dream come true, putting in – now that you look back on it, and it just kind of all fell into place.
Yep.
I didn't start here, and I didn't end here, but the best years of my career were here, so that's all I can wish for.
Well, I think, speaking for Cardinal Nation, I think we all consider you a lifelong Cardinal. Doing more research, and I forgot that you didn't end here, and obviously I knew you didn't start here, but man, you were a big part of our lives, and watching you play for the Cardinals was phenomenal. So, is that normal? Does the player, and maybe it's different today, but in your day, does the owner call all the time, or is that pretty unique to the Cardinal DeWitt doing that? Or because don't they normally talk to the agent?
Yeah, I think so. But nowadays, with the contracts that they're handing out, I think it's it is such an investment for the owner to get involved.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of hands-on owners these days. It's not the way it used to be where Augie Bush was kind of just running the brewery and the Cardinals was a sideshow for him.
This is their deal.
This is what they do. And Mr. DeWitt's very involved with day-to-day what's going on with the Cardinals. And like when we have our organizational meetings, Mr. DeWitt's there. He wants to know about all the minor league kids. He wants to know who's coming up the pipeline. He's a big baseball fan. I think he started off as a bat boy back in the day, and he was involved with the Bush family, with the Rangers and the ownership there. And Mr. DeWitt's a lifelong baseball guy, and what he does is phenomenal for the communities, rebuilding the downtown area, and it's great to have him as a boss.
Right. Well, he got a good pickup yesterday.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's not bad.
Listen to all the sports talk shows. I mean, you don't realize that besides Mike Trout, he's probably the best all-around baseball player that there is in baseball, and we got him for at least 1 year.
Right.
And hopefully people around the area do a lot to make him fall in love with St. Louis and keep him around and feed him a lot of toasted raviolis and get him out there on the hill.
That's
and
right. Anheuser-Busch, all sorts of stuff. So back to that, when you're a kid watching Ozzie and Willie and Keith Hernandez, we're close to the same age. That was my prime as well. Do you ever just pinch yourself when you're hanging out with Ozzie and Willie and I'm Jason Isringhausen. I was a pitcher.
Right.
I'm hanging out with these guys now?
Yeah, Willie, before he became a coach with the major league team, he was kind of what I do, roving around the minor leagues, and we'd meet up and we go golfing, and we talk about the old times and things like that, and just listen to the way he speaks to the kids. There was a lot more to Willie than what met the eye because he was so quiet when he played, and he's got a lot of knowledge, and for him to be on the big league staff now is pretty amazing. And as we all know, watching him make those plays in '82 against the Brewers and things like that, and he was my dad's favorite player, and then for me to get a signed jersey for my father. I mean, it's just been
yeah.
a lifelong dream, and it's just all coming true now. It's been really cool.
Did you get a lot of that stuff when you were playing, the memorabilia stuff from players?
No, I have maybe 8 autographs from baseball. I mean, I played 22 years and I've got 8 autographs. It was just people that, I was in awe of, or like Derek Jeter. I came up through the minor leagues against him. We always had, we were always battling back and forth and stuff. It was the Mets and the Yankees who I came up with. And so I have him, Bonds, Clemens, Gwynn, and then guys that meant something to me, like Johnny Franco took me under his wing when I was with the Mets. So, I mean, it's just everything's got a meaning to me.
Yeah.
And, of course, I've got Nolan Ryan's. I got to meet him. I met him in person finally my very last year. I was playing with Anaheim, and Mike Scioscia was our manager. And him and Nolan, I guess, became buddies throughout the years. And our media guy come up to me and say, "Hey, would you like to meet Nolan Ryan?" It's like, started shaking. And it was like the only time I've ever been like really starstruck in my life to meet anybody. And got nervous, got birds in the belly and all butterflies and everything. And I asked him if I said, "I'd be honored if you would sign a jersey for me." And he said, "Oh, sure, anything." And so I ended up mailing him one, and he wrote to me, and it was great watching your career and this and that. Good luck. And I was just like in awe. And it's like one of my prized possessions, Is that hanging up in the house somewhere? It's up in the man cave.
I like it. I like it. So let's talk about the day you got the call, right? Some people have some cool stories, some don't. But what was that day like? You get the call and say, "Jason, you're coming to the big leagues."
I was in AAA Norfolk with the Mets, and I think Toby Hara was our manager. And I was a little bit of a problem child coming up. I had my fun in the minor leagues. I was that big time prospect. I had the world by the what, and kind of did whatever I wanted. And I got called in the office and thought I'd done something wrong again. And he kind of started berating me about something that he kind of knew about, and I was like, I didn't know. And then it went into they want to see you in New York, and I thought I was in real trouble. But he said, "But you're going there to pitch, not to get in trouble." And so I mean, sigh of relief, and I got to call mom and dad. That's always, and when these kids talk about getting to call their parents, it's always pretty special. And I got to make my debut in Chicago against the Cubs, and I think I left 150 tickets for that day, and then we all went out that night and had a big party and stuff like that. So it was a, dream come true. And, when I got drafted, my father said, go off and do this for a summer and come back and work at the refinery with me when you get done. And, my career lasted 22 years. So it was awesome. Pretty special, but it's you just have certain moments throughout your career that you remember, and that was one of them. Like calling my parents, and then seeing all my friends and family when I was taking BP on Wrigley Field for my first start. Pretty special.
I bet. That's awesome. So do you, as a player, obviously growing up as a Cardinal fan, the Cub Card rivalry. As a player, do you think about that? Like you're out there and like, oh, this is the Cubs. And obviously if they're whoever's leading the division or whatever, but you guys had a lot of success in your time here in St. Louis. But do you think about that stuff, the rivalries?
No, I think you have to, because the fans make a big deal out of it.
Right.
I mean, it used to be really big back when we were there. We were having the Dusty Baker and the Tony La Russa's flipping each other off across the diamond and throwing at people's heads and things like that. That was usually all taken care of before I would get in the game.
Right.
So, I hit people every once in a while, but maybe,
not on purpose though.
No, never. But it was always handled way before I got in the game, and we always know who you're playing because the fan base lets you know who's coming up, or when the Cubs are in town, how much blue is in the sea of red. Yeah, we always see that kind of stuff. Yep. So there's no added pressure, but you know who you're playing.
Were you? I was talking to Edmonds one time, and he's obviously a longtime Cardinal for those listeners, but he said his first game as a Cincinnati Red was that game. I can't remember if you were playing then or not, when they got in the big fight, the brawl. Were you part of that? Do you remember?
I was not, no.
Okay. I don't know if you were part of that or not, but I thought that's funny. His first game as a Cincinnati Red was against the Cardinals, and it turns into this massive brawl, and Cueto kicked the guy or whatever it was.
Yeah, he was kicking LaRue in the head. Yeah. And, Roland was on the Reds then. He went after Carp, and it was just a big debacle.
Yeah. So when you think about your childhood, what were your dreams, your aspirations, and I guess a follow-up question to that is, when did you know you were different?
You know what? My dream, my father was a Navy guy, so my dream was probably I was going to go into the armed services. I've always been enamored by the Navy SEALs and things like that, and special forces. And I was never a big school person.
Yep.
I went there because I was told to go there. I didn't really go there to learn anything. So I figured I'd go to a school and then go in the armed services and make a career out of that.
Yeah.
But, as a kid, you're always running around throwing rocks at things, and I was the one that was never missing,
Right.
knocking birds off poles and things like that. And I could always throw it further and harder than everybody, besides, one other friend of mine. And we played together. He got drafted by the Mets, too, Sean Watson.
Wow.
He was the reason that I got noticed because people were coming to watch him. And he was always the athlete of the year of the area and things like that. And so I owe a lot to him. But, the more I played sports as a kid, you just everything kind of came easy. I played every sport there was, and track and baseball were at the same time, but I never had to go to track practice. It was just just show up to a meet if you can. And I was a jumper. I was a high jumper and long jumper. But it was just things that just happened. I never really thought about it until I got really. I had an old scout that came to high school to watch. I had myself, Sean Watson, and Matt Booz. We all got drafted out of Southwestern, and Sean and I were by the Mets. Matt was by the Rangers, and we all did it. And you kind of think about it, but then you're watching TV and you're like, I can't do that. I'm not as good as these guys.
Right.
But then I got drafted I was playing outfield, and the Mets said, well, you're going to pitch. And I was like, just teach me how to do it. And I could always throw hard, so they kind of honed that in and started working out. And then my second year in the minor leagues, I played in Pittsfield, Mass. I led the league in strikeouts, and then that's kind of like where I was like, well, you know what, maybe I got a chance at this. Right. And then just kept building and building and building, and then it just kind of took over from there.
So it wasn't even like you were going in as a pitcher.
No.
Totally mind shift changed to a different position.
It was kind of like, I was just an athlete.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we do it now as the Cardinals organization. We draft athletes.
Yep.
And if you have a guy, and I talk to our scouting director now, if you can find me an outfielder that can throw really, really hard, good,
we'll turn him into
we'll make him into a pitcher.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do now is we're trying to draft some bigger size guys that can throw hard, and we'll make them pitchers.
That's awesome. Well, wasn't it Mott, right? When he was drafted as a catcher.
Rosenthal was an infielder. I mean, it happens a lot. Bob Force was a third baseman. Wow. I mean, it's just a lot of guys that pitch when they're little, their arm wears out.
Yeah.
But you find those kids that play in a position and they're good athletes, we can make them into pitchers.
So talk about your philosophy as a parent, as a former baseball player, now as a coach to kids. What are we doing wrong as parents? What are you seeing out there?
I would say,
or is this a whole nother podcast?
I don't like awarding mediocrity.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that everybody gets a trophy.
Yep.
And I know, not every kid. I know every parent thinks their kid's going to be the next Mike Trout, but it's really not going to happen.
Right.
And giving them false hopes for finishing last in a tournament and giving them a trophy, I don't believe in that.
Yep.
I was always the one that only had first place trophies. I hated the second place trophy.
Yep.
And I just awarding mediocrity is one of my biggest pet peeves. If you don't win, you don't win. And why do first, second place is the first loser in my mind. It's always been that way. And like Ricky Bobby says, you're not first, you're last, right?
That's right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things. And I don't like the whole select baseball thing. Mm-hmm. If you're a good baseball player in July, you'll be a good baseball player next July too. I heard that from John Smoltz one time. I mean, let kids play every sport you can.
Right.
And I hate the fact that high schools will only let kids play one sport sometimes. Right. But, that's just the world we live in right now.
I also don't like the fact that kids are playing club sports over high school sport.
Right.
You see that a lot, and I'm like, man, you think about, I don't know, like we never won a state title or anything like that. Did you guys win a state title or anything?
No, we got third one time.
So, but you think, like, those are the memories, though, you'll never forget,
exactly.
Right? Just a tournament every weekend, you're not going to remember that.
Well, everybody thinks that their kid's going to these showcases and stuff. If your kid's good, they're going to get noticed.
Right.
That's just the way it is. Just because he plays in a $10,000 league doesn't mean he's going to get a better chance to play Division I college than the next kid.
That's right.
If you're a good athlete, if you're a good sport player, whatever sport it might be, you're going to get noticed. Yeah. It's just the way it is.
So you're in line with my time when I crushed one of my kids. I was coaching my son Drew in basketball, and it's one of those like why things, and everybody gets a medal, right? Well, I kind of secretly took the medals, and I took them at home, and I threw them in the trash can. And my son opens the trash can. He's like, "Are those our team trophies?" And I'm like, "Yep." I'm like, there's no winners and losers at the Y, so you don't get a trophy if you don't win,
Right?
right? I mean, I can't stand
and then,
it.
you know, they don't keep score sometimes.
Right.
Well, I hated that. I mean, it's kids need to learn how to lose and learn how to lose gracefully. Because life is not about winning every single time. It's the ones that lose and keep coming back for more are the ones that actually learn something.
That's right.
You know, the old saying is like, you know, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up.
That's right.
And, you know, I'm a firm believer in that. I always have been. I mean, that's the way I was raised.
Yep.
You know, I've never settled for losing. I'm still that same way even when I play something with my kids today. I'm not going to let them beat me. I don't care what it is.
Right.
And I've always said I'd step on my grandmother's neck to get first place. And my mother used to hate me for it, and my wife hates me for it now. But it's just the way I am, the way I'm wired.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it obviously worked. So what were your parents like, I mean, to you as a kid? I mean, were they pushing, push? Did you just want it? I mean, what were you at on that?
You know, I loved going to, you know, when we had baseball practice, we lived in a little town of Brighton, Illinois, and we drove our bicycles up to the ballpark, and I was there every single day. Right after school, we all would meet there and play stickball, Indian ball, whatever it was. And we loved practice. I mean, we loved going. Now it seems like kids hate going to practice. They only want to play games. But, you know, how do you get better?
Right.
It's just, that's what we talk about. The process is more important than the product. I mean, you put in the work. Everybody, it's the guys that do the little bit of extra are the ones that are going to stand out. I mean, if you like being mediocrity or being in the middle of the road and being okay, being average, well, then that's great. But the guys that work harder and want to put in the extra work are the guys that are going to stand out.
Right. And that's off the field too, right? That's not just
that's
when
just,
practice
that's
is going.
just in life in general. I mean, even doing whatever field you're in your business. I mean, it's the guys that do that little bit of extra that get the big offices, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. So talk to us about, you know, people talk about balance all the time. I don't necessarily agree with the balance, but talk to us about balance and how did you do that with family and traveling? I mean, you're gone a lot, right? So how did you do that? So, and sorry to interrupt again, but so you think about the people now that whether they travel for work or they're busy, right? So how do you do that? How do you balance that stuff?
Well, we all call it. I mean, it's a balancing act. You know, you have to give and take. You know, you have to have behind a great man is an even better woman.
Yep.
You know, you better find a good wife who's okay with being a single parent, you know, so to speak.
Right.
Especially as a professional athlete. I mean, my wife was a single parent for 10 years.
Right.
You know, we're never home. And when we are home, we're home for 3 or 4 days and we screw up the program.
Right.
I mean, she gets so mad. She goes, it's just easier when you're not here.
Right, exactly.
And because we screw up everything. So you got to have a strong woman to have a great career. And but the balancing act is, you know, you have to make time, no matter if it's trust naps. Really, for me, mine was getting up early, taking the kids to school to be part of their life, and then coming back, maybe taking a nap.
Yep.
I mean, I had to make time for my children and my wife, or it just wasn't going to work. I didn't want to be that father that didn't, or the kids grew up without one.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to sacrifice, no matter if you want to get up and go hunting or whatever, when you know that your kid wants to be with you, and you just have to sacrifice a lot.
Sacrifice is a big deal.
Yeah.
When you hear the word fear, I ask every guest on here, how many fears you put in your mind? How many of them came true to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
I don't fear anything. I fear for my children getting hurt.
Yep.
Health. You know, I visited enough children's hospitals to see, you know, what goes on, and for me to be as lucky as I am to have a healthy family for the most part. I mean, I thank God every day for that, but I think that's probably my biggest fear, especially now that my kid's driving, and the cell phones and the texting and driving and the distractions and everything that goes along with that. That's probably my biggest fear now is when she leaves the house every day. But other than that, I had a fear of failure that I learned how to turn into adrenaline when I was pitching, because I was scared to death every time I went out there of failing.
So how'd you do that?
It was a process. I try to teach these kids today of how to turn that fear of failure into adrenaline. But, you know, it was a simple process of being so scared to fail and then remembering what the sense of when I succeeded, what that felt like, and trying to block out the fear of failure and just putting that fear. It's hard to explain how I did it, but it mainly just being so scared to fail at something that you had to succeed
You had your own little
whatever
hacks, really.
at whatever cost.
Yeah. So you had your own little hack system, if you will, in your mind.
Yeah, it was just a check system in my brain.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm scared to death to do this.
Yeah.
But I also know what the end result's going to feel like, and able to put that above the other.
So was visualization part of that? Like, did you sit down, like maybe during the day, and visualize success?
I was not. No, the only thing that I would watch good outings. I never watched a bad outing.
Yeah.
If I had a bad outing, I never watched
Turn the page.
It was like that mental fatigue of just watching over and over. Like I would have our video guy make up a tape of 50 fastballs down and away, 50 fastballs up and in, and then 50 curveballs, and I would just watch them over and over and over, and watch my mechanics and remember what that. Because once I watch it on TV, I can remember that exact pitch and what it felt like coming off my fingertips. Yeah. And as a pitcher, when that ball comes off your hand in a certain way, it just like it's almost like when you hit the sweet spot on the golf club or on a baseball bat, you don't feel anything. It's just like, oh, that ball's going a long way, like when you hit a good drive.
Right.
And it's the same thing when you're a pitcher. You feel that ball come off your fingertips, and you don't feel anything. When it comes off there bad, you can feel it in your wrist, your forearm, your shoulder, everything. And it was just remembering those things.
Yeah. How important is the in today's world, and even when you're playing, the mobility, just stretching, taking care of your body, all that stuff?
That has really, I guess, morphed into something that we never had before. Yeah. Ours was all weightlifting.
Right.
Be as strong as you can. My job as a reliever was a sprint, not so much as a pitcher when it's a marathon.
Right.
When you're throwing 120 pitches a day, and it's you got to elongate your muscles. And as a reliever, I always try to be as big as strong as I could because I went for a short burst as hard as I possibly could.
Yep. It
was just a sprint. So I lifted in that way. I would do like 5 reps as heavy as I could possibly lift.
Yep.
And that's nowadays the pitchers are they're getting into the Pilates and all that stuff and trying to elongate the muscles to give them better elasticity, so to speak, and so they can the rigors of 220 innings of a year. I mean, it takes a big body to do that.
Yep.
And we also look at that when we're drafting kids. I mean, is this kid going to be able to sustain 200 innings? And is he not? Because, a guy like a guy we just traded, Luke Weaver,
yep,
he was never going to sustain 200 innings in a year. So, in my opinion. So, moving to the bullpen, making him a long man out of the bullpen, and that was probably his best bet.
Yeah, because I walked in last week. I was doing this. I did a training with there's like 11 or 12 pitchers, and I walk in. I'm thinking you're gonna see all these weights, and they're like on rollers. These balls are like rolling through their arms. I was like, man, that was. But think of Tom Brady, right? I mean, he's made a career out of doing that type of stuff. So talk to us about some of your best baseball moments. If you had to narrow 1 or 2 or 3 things down, you probably got some of those in your mind. What are some of those?
Probably AAA All-Star team. I pitched in the AAA All-Star game, and I got called up the next day. So that's probably one. And then my big league debut in Chicago.
How'd you do?
7 innings, no decision. 7 innings, 2 runs, no decision.
Nice.
And then probably an All-Star game, my first one with the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
Closing out my first playoff game in Yankee Stadium. Was probably the nervous I'd ever been in my life. And it's been recorded of Jason Giambi was our first baseman. And he came up to me, and it was a guy out first and second, 1 out, and we're laughing on the mound. And everybody's like, what are you guys laughing about? It's like, nut cutting time.
Exactly.
And I told him, he goes, what are you doing up here? He always called me Baby Huey. He goes, Huey, what are you doing? He goes, I said, dude, I can't feel my legs. I was so nervous.
I cannot feel my legs.
I cannot feel my legs. And we just started laughing on the mound. And he's like, all right, go get him. He goes, hey, at least no one's watching.
Yeah.
Like that. And so then it was over with.
Yeah.
And then everything else was easy from there, really. I got out of that jam, and then I said, if I can do this in Yankee Stadium, I can do it anywhere.
In the playoffs, right?
The old Yankee Stadium was weird. You'd be on the mound, and it looked like you'd look up, and it looked like the stadium never ended. It was so tall. It's not like the new stadium where it's more spread out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Chicago. It's kind of like Wrigley. It seems like everybody's right on top of you.
What was your favorite stadium to play in? Besides Busch, of course. What was your favorite stadium?
I like Pittsburgh, actually.
Okay.
I love Pittsburgh. It's probably my favorite stadium.
That one gets voted a lot.
Standing at home plate and seeing, all the bridges and 3 rivers, how it all comes together. It's probably that in Colorado with the mountains and the snow caps and everything like that. everything, and then you got the nostalgia of Boston and old New York, and I got to play in Candlestick. I played in almost every old stadium except I didn't play in the Kingdome, and I didn't play in Old Detroit Stadium.
Okay, but everything else,
I
Fenway,
played in.
everything.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I got my name inside the wall in Fenway and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And when you play in the old stadiums like that, you think about the history. It's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. So let's talk about a few. I'm going to say a few names. Tell me what these people mean to you. Tony La Russa.
Father-like.
Why is that?
He stuck with me when he didn't really, probably shouldn't. I mean, at times when I was hurt, I had a bad hip, bad arm at times, and he kept throwing me out there. He just kept telling me. I said, I don't know. He goes, well, you're the best I got, so you're going out there.
Yeah.
So him having that faith in me, made me believe in myself a little more.
Yeah.
And that really helped out a lot.
So you see Tony now. What's that like?
He always calls me Big Load. I mean, we always give each other a hug or whatever, a little man hug, and that's about it. Everybody knows Tony. He's like, hey, Tony, how are you? Well, I'll let you know at 10:30. He was always that guy.
Right.
And but a brilliant baseball mind, sometimes too brilliant. He would get too far ahead of himself and forget to get a reliever up for the next hitter. He was thinking too far down the road. But learned a lot from him, and learned a lot about myself from him.
Edmonds, the ones you can share, because I know you guys were suite mates there for a while. Back when they had to have suite mates, right?
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore.
Jimmy is one. I mean, besides probably Albert, was probably one of the best pure talents that I'd ever seen. Wow. Jimmy was that guy that would have a sprained pinky toe in spring training and never play in spring training until like the last week.
Yeah.
And rake. And, he knew his body better than anybody. He knew his ability better than anybody. And spring training was a waste for him. He would get about 15 at-bats before the season started, and off he'd go. Amazing. He had probably the most power the other way that I'd ever seen from anybody. He could hit the ball farther to left center than he could to right center as a left-handed hitter. And everybody knows what he could do in the outfield.
It's amazing.
He saved me he saved me a few times, that's for sure.
Were you pitching during the catch?
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
And if you talk to Jimmy, we were. He made one the night before too.
Yeah.
We were sitting in the bar, shocker, and we were talking. I was like, "Hey, when are you ever going to make one of those plays for me to save the game?" And it wasn't the next night.
Wow.
That he made that.
And then for our listeners, that's play. The one where he sprawled out. That was what?
In Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Off Jason LaRue, he hit a ball to center field straight away, and he ran straight back. Planted into the wall, went up over the wall, and he wasn't even looking at the ball.
Yeah, that was amazing.
His back was completely to the home plate and caught that ball. He was probably 3 foot over the wall, and that's why his reaction was the way it was. Laughing, because we had just talked about it the night before about making that play.
That's cool.
For
That's
me.
good to know that. Yeah, because he does. He is kind of like laughing. And kind of going crazy.
We had just talked about it that night before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wayno.
From baby to man, we had him in 2006 as a rookie. Right. He was kind of piddling around in the bullpen, blah, blah, blah. I went down hurt.
Yep.
And, we sat in the office, me and Tony and Dunk, and we talked about who could do it. And we didn't know Wayno that much at the time, but stuff-wise, we knew he had the stuff to do it.
Yep.
And from that moment on, he just grew into who he is now, which is a consummate, pro, and the guy that you want on the mound when it gets tough.
That's
and
right.
He has became, besides Carp, one of the best competitors that we've probably ever seen.
So where were you sitting then as the closer got hurt? Where were you sitting in? I guess Shea Stadium, Shea Stadium. 2006, Beltran, who obviously for those maybe not be a Cardinal fan, is a Cardinal killer.
Right.
Bases juiced. We're up.
Well, Beltran, we pretty much made him that contract when he signed that big. He was with Houston.
Yeah, right.
And then we got him that big contract with the Mets.
Exactly.
And he comes up with I think first and second, 2 outs, and I think he started him off with a changeup for a strike and kind of piddled around a little bit and got him 3-2 and. I mean, for a rookie with the set of cojones to throw a 3-2 breaking ball the way he did. So in Shea Stadium, you have the Shea Stadium clubhouse, and then what we have is the Creature Den, which is underneath the stadium where they had like a little room, and you could go underneath there, and there was a couch, and there was a TV, and everything was So myself, Mark Mulder, and Jason Marquis were all down there watching the game, and there's a delay.
Oh my gosh!
So as the game's going on, we can't hear everything. So even like the Indy Chavez catch, over the wall off rolling, the stadium shakes. So the stands are shaking above us. The dust is coming off the stands and stuff on us, and then we don't know what's going on. And then you hear it just silence, and then he throws that curveball for a strike. And we're all jumping around, and then we got to run all the way around and run to the clubhouse and then run out on the field and stuff. It was, we were in our lucky spot, so we couldn't leave. It's just, everybody knows where they were on that pitch as a Cardinal fan.
Yep.
And the same thing when you struck out Inge to end that World Series. I mean, everybody knows where they were.
That's right.
And some good times from Waino, and I mean, Waino just built on it from there to where he is now, and now he's that guy that everybody looks for leadership. And we tried to give it to him back then. Now he's giving it to us, and that's how we hopefully what we talk about the Cardinal way is how we do it as players. I mean, you as an older guy try to make the guy next to you better, and you just keep building that repertoire and that tradition, and it's working so far. We just got to keep getting the right people in there.
Last one, Yadier Molina.
Best ever, the GOAT, greatest of all time catchers. Watching him protect a pitching staff, watching him the way he goes about, preparation, and he's just like another pitching coach out there, and he is everybody knows what he can do defensively, but what he does mentally for the kids is amazing. And being what I do with bringing those kids up through the minor leagues, and we talk to him like, just trust Yadi. Yadi knows what he's doing.
Right.
And if you shake off Yadi, you better not make a mistake, because Yadi's going to come after you for shaking him off. But Yadi's very understanding with the kids. He was there once. He learned under Mike Matheny.
Right.
I got to throw to both of them. I always say Mike was the robot and Yadi was the God-given talent. They're both Gold Glove catchers.
Right.
They both do it different ways. And, I was fortunate enough to – as a Cardinal fan, you've had some of the best ever.
Yeah.
And we traded away Carson Kelly, who was the heir apparent to Yadi defensively.
Right.
And but we got two young kids in A-ball that are going to be really good, too.
All right. Good. So we got something coming.
Yeah.
So are you superstitious?
I used to say I wasn't, but when I look back on things, like I said, changing my socks, changing shoes, gloves.
Right.
So I was a little bit.
Sitting in your same seat.
Like right now, I'm not.
Right.
Like if I go out to a hunting stand, I'm not superstitious about things or anything like that. But I guess I am in a way. Like I'll wear the same sweatshirt if my daughter has a good volleyball game. I'll wear the same sweatshirt the next day. Little stuff.
I'm that way. So what would you tell Jason Isringhausen, 15, 20 years ago? What would you tell that guy looking back?
Take better care of yourself.
Yeah.
I lived my life to the fullest, had a lot of fun. Probably stayed out too late sometimes when I should have got more sleep. Always thought that I was going to be able to throw always. I didn't take very good care of my arm and my body like kids do today. Nutrition more than anything. Pitcher of beer and hot wings was my dinner. It's just the way it worked, and it worked out well.
Right.
And I had farm boy strength.
Yeah.
I wish I would have taken, like I said, better care of myself, better nutrition.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't feel the way I do now. I mean, 17 surgeries later, it's 17. Just getting out of bed every day is a chore. But, a couple aspirin here and there, and we're good to go.
Right. Maybe a pitcher of beer and some wings every now
and then. Every now and then at the club we'll have one.
That's right. Well, man, it's been awesome. It's been awesome having you here. I really appreciate it. I loved watching your career. Loved watching what you did, and I love the fact that you're a Brighton, Illinois kid. You stay around. You're present in the community, and you're not one of these guys that's like, man, you are all the way up here. You're approachable. You're cool with normal folks like myself. I think it's awesome, man.
Well, I've never wanted to have been that guy that people thought of as a horse's butt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've always tried to treat people the way that I want to be treated.
Yeah.
And, you never know when you're going to be in a bad spot and you need somebody. So I tell every kid, you never know who you're going to meet every day. Watch what bridges you burn.
That's right.
And, treat people with respect. That's all we can do.
All right, man. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.